temple room this morning in the temple complex. Very nice to have you with us this morning. So we'll be going Canto 9, Chapter 6, text number 1 through 37. And our focus today will be on text number 7. This is my man in armor beside me here, who is going to relate to me any questions or comments you might have at the end of class. Now we'll chant invoking the blessings of the Supreme Lord. And that happens to be Shishiradha Kalachanji. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Janavallabha Girivardhari Jashoranandana Brajajana Ranjana Jashoranandana Brajajana Ranjana Yamuna Tira Vandachari Jamuna Tira Vandachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Nitai Gaura Premananda Hari Hari Bo. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Narayanam Namaskritya Naram Jaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Yasan Tato Jaya Mudirayat Nastabresha Bhadreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavati Uttama Shloke Bhakti Bhavati Naistiki Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam Ki Jai. We don't have a screen up here, so we'll have to rely on your telephones. So I'm going to ask Manjari Gopika Devi. I want you to read the entirety of text number 1 through 37. Would you do that, please? Okay, that depends on our having audio support here.
Shukadev Goswami said, O Maharaj Parikshit, Ambarish had 3 sons named Virup, Ketuman, and Shambhu. From Virup came a son named Prashadashva, and from Prashadashva came a son named Ratitara. Ratitara had no sons, and therefore he requested that the great sage Angira to beget sons for him. Because of this request, Angira begot sons in the womb of Ratitara's wife. All these sons were born with Brahminical prowess. Having been born from the womb of Ratitara's wife, all these sons were known as the dynasty of Ratitara. But because they were born from the semen of Angira, they were also known as the dynasty of Angira. Among all the progeny of Ratitara, these sons were the most prominent because, owing to their birth, they were considered Brahmins. The son of Manu was Ikshvaku. When Manu was sneezing, Ikshvaku was born from Manu's nostrils. King Ikshvaku had 100 sons, of whom Vikukshi, Nimi, and Dandaka were the most prominent.
Let me ask you, stop you for a moment and ask you, does anybody know of another character, personality in the Srimad Bhagavatam who was born from one's nostrils? Mother Kunti. Varaha, born from the nostrils of Lord Brahma. Okay, please, go ahead.
Of the 100 sons, 25 became kings in the western side of Aryavarta, a place between the Himalaya and Vindhya mountains. Another 25 sons became kings in the east of Aryavarta, and the 3 principal sons became kings in the middle. The other sons became kings in various other places.
All right, now let's stop just for another moment. And this is a chapter that deals a lot with lineages. And sometimes we find that rather boring to read. So if you're not excited by knowing these names, and some of us are not, think of the person who is reciting this Srimad Bhagavatam and that he has heard it from his father. Who is that person? Originally Shukadeva Goswami, right? Hearing from Krishna Dwaipai and Vyasadeva, his father. Okay, please go on.
During the months of January, February, and March, oblations offered to the forefathers are called Ashtaka Shraddha. The Shraddha ceremony is held during the dark fortnight of the month. When Maharaj Ikshvaku was performing his oblations in this ceremony, he ordered his son Vikukshi to go immediately to the forest to bring some pure flesh. Thereafter, Ikshvaku's son Vikukshi went to the forest and killed many animals suitable for being offered as oblations. But when fatigued and hungry, he became forgetful and ate a rabbit he had killed.
Okay, all right, so this is a rather interesting thing that a young man, a Brahmin, and this is, I don't know which of the yugas this is in, but I'm presuming Satya Yuga. He was born at a time when, Brahmins were quite competent. And so we wonder why this was done. So we have to read Srila Prabhupada's purports to find out some of these things. And that was text number 7, I believe, wasn't it? So that's the one that we'll be hearkening back to when we get done at the end of the reading today through text number 37. Please continue.
Vikukshi offered the remnants of the flesh to King Ikshvaku, who gave it to Vashishta for purification. But Vashishta could immediately understand that part of the flesh had already been taken by Vikukshi, and therefore he said that it was unfit to be used in the Shraddha ceremony. When King Ikshvaku, thus informed by Vashishta, understood what his son Vikukshi had done, he was extremely angry. Thus he ordered Vikukshi to leave the country because Vikukshi had violated the regulative principles. Having been instructed by the great and learned Brahmin Vashishta, who discoursed about the absolute truth, Maharaj Ikshvaku became renounced. By following the principles for a yogi, he certainly achieved the supreme perfection after giving up his material body. After his father's disappearance, Vikukshi returned to the country and thus became the king, ruling the planet Earth and performing various sacrifices to satisfy the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Vikukshi later became celebrated as Shishada. The son of Shishada was Puranjaya, who is also known as Indravaha and sometimes as Kukukshta. Please hear from me how he received different names for different activities. Formerly, there was a devastating war between the demigods and the demons. The demigods, having been defeated, accepted Puranjaya as their assistant and then conquered the demons. Therefore, this hero is known as Puranjaya, he who conquered the residents of the demons. Puranjaya agreed to kill all the demons on the condition that Indra would be his carrier. Because of his pride, Indra could not accept this proposal. But later, by the order of the Supreme Lord Vishnu, Indra did accept it and became a great bull carrier for Puranjaya.
Now, does anybody remember hearing of this before, of Indra taking the form of a bull in order to carry someone else? Anyhow, I didn't remember that, so it was refreshing to go back and look at that. You know, here is Indra, the topmost of the demigods, besides Lord Brahma and Lord Shiva, of course. But here he's being asked by the Supreme Lord to take the form of a bull, and this was done. This was no problem to do, but you know, we think there was another time when a very advanced personality took the subordinate role of chariot driver. Who was that person who took that role? Lord Sri Krishna himself. He agreed to become the chariot driver of Arjuna. So we should learn a lesson from this, and that is never mind accepting a position in our community which might seem a little below our dignity. If we're asked to do something that ordinarily would be done by the lowest person in society, such as cleaning a bathroom, then we should be willing to take that up, even that service, or to wash pots and things. And there are quite a number of devotees in our community who take up such roles. And so we very much appreciate and laud them for doing that. Would you go on, please?
Well protected by armor and desiring to fight, Puranjaya took up a transcendental bow and very sharp arrows, and, while being highly praised by the demigods, he got up on the back of the bull, Indra, and sat on its hump. Thus he is known as Kukukshta. Being empowered by Lord Vishnu, who is the super soul and the supreme person, Puranjaya sat on the great bull and is therefore known as Indravaha. Surrounded by the demigods, he attacked the residents of the demons in the west. There was a fierce battle between the demons and Puranjaya. Indeed, it was so fierce that when one hears about it, one's hairs stand on end. All the demons bold enough to come before Puranjaya were immediately sent to the residence of Yamaraj by his arrows. To save themselves from the blazing arrows of Indravaha, which resembled the flames of devastation at the end of the millennium, the demons who remained when the rest of their army was killed fled very quickly to their respective homes. After conquering the enemy, the saintly King Puranjaya gave everything, including the enemy's riches and wives, to Indra, who carries a thunderbolt. For this he is celebrated as Puranjaya. Thus Puranjaya is known by different names because of his different activities. The son of Puranjaya was known as Anena. Anena's son was Prithu, and Prithu's son was Vishvagandhi. Vishvagandhi's son was Chandra, and Chandra's son was Yuvanashva. The son of Yuvanashva was Shravasta, who constructed a township known as Shravasti Puri. The sons of Shravasta was Brihastashva, and his son was Kuvalayashva. In this way, the dynasty increased. To satisfy the sage Uttanka, the greatly powerful Kuvalayashva killed a demon named Dundu. He did this with the assistance of his 21,000 sons. O Maharaj Parikshit, for this reason, Kuvayashva is celebrated as Dundundumara, the killer of Dundu. All but 3 of his sons, however, were burned to ashes by the fire emanating from Dundu's mouth. The remaining sons were Dridashva, Kapilashva, and Bhadrashva. From Dridashva came a son named Haryashva, whose son is celebrated as Nikumba. The son of Nikumba was Bahulashva. The son of Bahulashva was Krishashva. The son of Krishashva was Senajit. And the son of Senajit was Yuvanashva. Yuvanashva had no sons, and thus he retired from family life and went to the forest. Although Yuvanashva went into the forest with his 100 wives, all of them were very morose. The sages in the forest, however, being very kind to the king, began very carefully and attentively performing an Indra Yagya so that the king might have a son. Being thirsty one night, the king entered the arena of sacrifice, and when he saw all the Brahmins laying down, he personally drank the sanctified water meant to be drunk by his wife. When the Brahmins got up from bed and saw the water pot empty, they inquired who had done this work of drinking the water meant for begetting a child. When the Brahmins came to understand that the king, inspired by the Supreme Controller, had drunk the water, they all exclaimed, "Alas, the power of providence is real power. No one can counteract the power of the Supreme." In this way, they offered their respectful obeisances unto the Lord. Thereafter, in due course of time, a son with all the good symptoms of a powerful king came forth from the lower right side of King Yuvashanasva's.
So you have to be kind of careful, when you're dealing with foodstuffs or water that is offered in sacrifice. If it's not your turn, don't do it, because otherwise you might wind up being a male and having a son from your own body. Read on.
Mm-hmm. Thereafter, in due course of time, a son with all the good symptoms of a powerful king came forth from the lower right side of King Yuvanashva's abdomen. The baby cried so much for breast milk that all the Brahmins were very unhappy. "Who will take care of this baby?" they said. Then Indra, who was worshipped in that yagya, came and solaced the baby. "Do not cry," Indra said. Then Indra put his index finger in the baby's mouth and said, "You may drink me."
Don't underestimate the power of King Indra. Go on.
Because Yuvanashva, the father of the baby, was blessed by the Brahmins, he did not fall a victim to death. After this incident, he performed severe austerities and achieved perfection in that very spot. Mandatta, the son of Yuvanashva, was the cause of fear for Ravana and other thieves and rogues who caused anxiety. O King Parikshit, because they feared him, the son of Yuvanashva was known as Trasadasyu. This name was given by King Indra. By the mercy of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the son of Yuvanashva was so powerful that when he became emperor, he ruled the entire world, consisting of 7 islands, without any second ruler. The Supreme Personality of Godhead is not different from the auspicious aspects of great sacrifices, such as the ingredients of the sacrifice, the chanting of Vedic hymns, the regulative principles, the performer, the priests, the result of the sacrifice, the arena of sacrifice, and the time of sacrifice. Knowing the principles of self-realization, Mandatta worshipped that transcendentally situated Supreme Soul, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Lord Vishnu, who comprises all the demigods. He also gave immense charity to the Brahmins, and thus he performed yagya to worship the Lord.
And our final verse, text number 37.
All places from where the sun rises on the horizon, shining brilliantly to where the sun sets, are known as the possession of the celebrated Mandatta, the son of Yuvanashva.
Quite a bit of land belonging to this personality. Om Jnana Timidandasya Jnananjana Salakaya Chakshurunmilitam jena tasmai Shri Gurave Namah. Shri Chaitanya Manobishtam Stapitam Jena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamaya Dadati Swavarantikam Vandeham, chant with me. Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Jutta Padakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Lalita Saganatam Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakan Vitamscha He Krishna Karanasando Dinabando Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Rishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Manchakalpa Tarubhyasya Kripa Sindhuvya Vacha Patitanam Bhavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namah Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadha Srivasadi Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam Ki Jai, Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prastaya Bhutale Srimate Tamal Krishna Gosamaniti Namane. So, if you will, back up with me now to text number 7. And we'll do word for word recitations. Tateti sa vanam gatva mrigan hatva kriyarhanam shranto bhubukshito vira shasham charad apasmriti. Now in poetry form, tateti savanam gatva mrigan hatva kriyahanam shranto bhubhuksito vira Shashyam chadad apasmriti. We'll do about 2 or 3 other chantings. Someone want to chant? Let's start with the little guys first. Iti savanam gatva mrigan hatva kriyarhanam Santa Mabhikshito Vira Shashyam Chadara Patrita Tateti Savanam Gatva Mrigan Hatva Kriyahanam Shranto Bubukshito Vira Charan Tateti Savanam Gatva Megan Ratva Kriyahanam Shranto Bubukshito Vira. Word for word. Tata, according to the direction. Iti, thus, sa, vikukchi, vanam, to the forest. Gatva, going. Mrigan, animals. Hatva, killing. Kriya arhanam, suitable for offering to the yagya in the Shraddha ceremony. Shranta, when he was fatigued, Bubukchita, and hungry, Vira, the hero, Shasyam, a rabbit, Cha, also, Adat, he ate, Apasmriti, forgetting that the flesh was meant for offering in the Shraddha. Translation by Srila Prabhupada. Thereafter Ikshvaku's son Vikukshi went to the forest and killed many animals suitable for being offered as oblations. But when fatigued and hungry, he became forgetful and ate a rabbit he had killed. Repeat with me. Thereafter Ikshvaku's son Vikukshi went to the forest and killed many animals suitable for being offered as oblations. But when fatigued and hungry, he became forgetful and ate a rabbit he had killed. And purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada Ki Jai. It is evident that Kshatriyas killed animals in the forest because the flesh of the animals was suitable to be offered at a particular type of yajna. Offering oblations to the forefathers in the ceremony known as Shraddha is also a kind of yajna. In this yajna, flesh obtained from the forest by hunting could be offered. That's strange to hear, isn't it? However, in the present age, Kali Yuga, this kind of offering is forbidden. Quoting from the Brahma-Vaivarta Purana, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu said, let's see, somebody read, Mother Kunti, would you read that, please?
Asvamedam kavalambam sanyasam balapatrikam tarena sitapatim kalo pancha vivarjayat.
Read the translation too, please.
In this age of Kali, 5 acts are forbidden: the offering of a horse and sacrifice, the offering of a cow and sacrifice, the acceptance of the order of sannyas, the offering of oblations of flesh to the forefathers, and a man's begetting children and his brother's wife.
The word pala paitrikam refers to an offering of flesh and oblations to the forefathers. Formerly, and these are the words of Srila Prabhupada, formerly such an offering was allowed, but in this age it is forbidden. In this age, Kali Yuga, everyone is expert in hunting animals, but most of the people are Shudras, not Kshatriyas. According to the Vedic injunctions, however, only Kshatriyas are allowed to hunt, whereas Shudras are allowed to eat flesh after offering goats and other insignificant animals before the deity of goddess Kali or similar demigods. On the whole, meat eating is not completely forbidden. A particular class of men is allowed to eat meat according to various circumstances and injunctions. As far as eating beef is concerned, however, beef is the flesh of cow. However, it is strictly prohibited to everyone. Thus, in Bhagavad Gita, Krishna personally speaks of Goraksham, or cow protection. Meat eaters, according to their different positions and directions of the Shastra, are allowed to eat flesh, but never the flesh of cows. Cows must be given all protection. Om Jnana Timirandasya Gyananjana Salakaya Chakshurun Militam Jena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namah. Sri Chaitanya Manobishtam Stapitam Jena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayan Darati Swabarantikam. So we see that the views on offering sacrifice of different kinds has changed from what it was at one point in time. And if we do some research in the literatures, it is likely that we'll find out the reason that is so. But now we're in the present day, and so we have to make sacrifices, which are generally not offered to the forefathers or the demigods, because we don't know how to do those things. Nor do we have Brahmins who are expert enough in chanting the mantras that are involved in such a yajna. So I want us to look at some of the examples of yajnas that we perform in this day and age. One is selecting our foodstuffs. And for most people, there are no restrictions. They know of no reason not to eat whatever happens to appeal to their taste buds. So they choose whatever they want to eat, and they eat it whenever they want to eat it and wherever they want to eat it. We know what is the result of that.
They have to take birth as that animal.
There are reactions. There are reactions. Madhgunti says they have to take birth in the forms of those animals that they have killed and also be killed. There's one exception to that that is particularly mentioned, and what is that? The eating the flesh of the cow. The cow. And in that case, you don't just take the birth of a cow in your next lifetime, but you take the birth in the body of cows for as many times as what?
Hairs on the body.
There are hairs on the bodies of the animals. And that's not just the person who eats the flesh, but also the person who raises the animal, kills the animal, brings it to market, and the one who prepares the flesh to be eaten by others. All of those participate in the reactions that come from the killing of an animal. Any animal, but especially in particular in this age, the cow. So our yajna as devotees is having to prepare, we buy and prepare only vegetarian foods. Now that's a yajna, it is. If you grew up in this society, as many of us did, eating anything and everything and anywhere, then to have to cut back on your diet and make decisions about what you're going to eat is a sacrifice, because it's not easy to do. It's easier today than it was 50 years ago. At that time, it was very unusual. Only New Agers and hippie, and I don't even know whether New Agers, that term had been evolved by then. But the hippies and the beatniks, they had some really unusual habits. Some of them turned to eating only vegetarian foods. Can we remember back that far? No, most of us cannot. Mishra Bhagavan Prabhu, can you remember a time when eating only vegetarian food was considered to be a little quirky? You're not hearing this, those of you at home. Mr. Bhagavat says when he was 10 years old, you decided to become a vegetarian? You were interested in it. We have a phone.
So I asked my mother, what's a vegetarian? And she said, well, I'm not really sure. maybe it must mean people who eat vegetables. That's the kind of thing. Before Prabhupada came to America, the word vegetarian wasn't used much. In
What year was that?
1965, 66.
1965. So it was not until 1971 that my wife and I decided to become vegetarian. So that is 29 plus 25 is 54 years now. And I remember thinking about that when I had been vegetarian as for half of my life, and then it began to tilt in the other direction. So it was not an easy thing to do, because my wife and I were also accustomed to going out to a restaurant or a fast food place to get something to eat. And that's whenever the mood struck us that we wanted. Nowadays, we have to prepare ahead of time. Whoever does the grocery buying, boga buying, and has to prepare for maybe 5-7 days or perhaps even longer. And that means that they have to be very careful about what they choose to eat. And for those of us that were vegetarian back in the 1960s and 70s, that was it was not an easy thing to do. It was a new habit that we had to take up. And so that was our yajna at the time. That was one of the most severe yajnas that we had ever performed in our lifetimes. And incidentally, in 1971, when we became vegetarian, was 2 years before we ever met devotees and ever heard the name Krishna. So whenever we did meet the devotees and hear the name Krishna and received our first book, which is Canto 1, Part 3, it was published in 3 parts at that time. Whenever we met the devotees for the very first time and began reading something about the philosophy, that's one hurdle that we did not have to make. We understood that the devotees were all vegetarian. The lacto-vegetarian, true, but vegetarian. Lacto means what? Milk products. Of course, some people, even devotees have sometimes gone to becoming vegan. But the reason that most of us have not is that it is necessary to offer milk to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And for those of us who cannot get milk that is free of violence, what do we call it? Ahimsa. Yeah, we cannot get ahimsa milk. Then we, in other words, we have to buy the milk and we have to offer it to Krishna. And we are permitted to offer it to Krishna because that's what Srila Prabhupada instructed us to do. And so, not only is it then, we understand it's beneficial for our young people, it's beneficial for everybody to have some quantity of milk, unless, of course, you're lactose intolerant. And that's a difficult one. That's another form of yajna, to have to give up milk. Even if you celebrate Chaturmasya, it's 1 month you have to give up liquid milk. And that's not an easy thing to do. 1 month you have to give up yogurt, and that also is a yajna. So we do have some yajnas ourselves that we perform. So let's get back to everybody else. Another yajna that they have to perform is deciding where they're going to live in the society, especially for those who have left their parental homes, their ancestral homes, and have gone to some other part of the country, some other part of the world even. And that is deciding where, and so a lot of people will use as their primary qualification for a place to live the type of school that they will send their kids to. And even in my family, that has been done. that the family has moved into an area that was a little more expensive really than they could afford comfortably, just so that their kids would have a decent school to go to. But of course we know that as public schools and many private schools are concerned, that doesn't solve all the problems. Just going to a high quality school that has high recommendations. No, because most of the time at those places, if they have a cafeteria, and most do, they serve foods that are indiscriminate regarding the serving of meat foods, flesh foods, and eggs. So we're not ovo-lacto vegetarian, we're lacto-vegetarian. We don't eat eggs. So this is a problem then for people when they have to go. They have to consider the cost of the property that they're going to be living in, the distance from their work. They're concerned about that, and so many people. Well, no, not many people. Some people choose intentional communities, which are not necessarily spiritual communities, but a lot of times they are. And sometimes that's a place that they can find to get the kind of education they want for their kids, and also get the kind of dietary restrictions that they want for themselves and their children. So many settle, as we did, into a religious community, a spiritual community, such as the one here at Radhakalachandjidam. Then we have to consider, most people out there have to consider what they're going to do for entertainment. So there's a sacrifice to make there. Have you looked at the price of tickets lately, or you've heard the price of tickets for concerts and football games and baseball games and ice hockeys? Well, you have to decide, it's a yajna, to give up a certain portion of your income to be able to go to those places, especially with tickets ranging from who knows what. What is it? Cowboys tickets, according to our sources here, $500 for a ticket. So, and my wife tells me that there appear to be fewer people going to the State Fair of Texas this year than we've seen in the past. And then she told me about the price of parking and the price of entry per person and the price of tickets to go on the rides. And so I'm shaking my head wondering, who can afford that? Of course, I understand that, when I was in my wage earning years, I never made the kind of money that people are making now. But if they spend their money on such entertainment as that, then that for them is a sacrifice, and they're willing to make that sacrifice. Some people I've heard go into debt for buying Christmas presents for their kids. This is also, so entertainment is a big deal in our society. And so we want to have pleasure of mind and body. If we go to a football game, and I'm not having to imagine here, it's been a long time since I've been to a football game, we always have to get something to eat, something to drink. Same thing as when you go to a movie theater. There's always the popcorn and the drinks, and then when I look at the prices, or when I hear about the prices, I feel sticker shock. How can anybody afford that? But they do. And then, of course, people also in performing the yajna of going out to some public event, they have to be hopeful that there are civil crowds, because we know, especially in other countries, when it comes to football or soccer, that sometimes there are riots that ensue after the game. The opposing parties, they get into fisticuffs. And what? And people die. And people die in those sorts of things. So is that a sacrifice? You're dang right it's a sacrifice. What if it's your kid that dies? But still, people are willing to perform that sacrifice of going out there. And so Another sacrifice is that most people perform is limiting their friends. In other words, they have to go and where are you going to find friends? You're going to find friends at work, perhaps, but in a lot of cases, not likely. You're going to find friends among the people who live around you? Questionable sometimes, if you're really lucky. So many people go to organizations such as churches and other kinds of civic organizations to find the persons that they're going to call their friends, the ones that they have over to the house, when there's not a special occasion or anything. That's kind of the definition of a friend, isn't it? Somebody who can drop by the house and then stop and have a cup of something or other with you, or eat a snack with you or something. So for a person to really limit himself, that's another form of sacrifice. It would be a lot easier just to take as your friends whoever you happen to run into at work, whoever happens to be living in the community with you. So what do we do as devotees? We look for a spiritual community. And that's our yajna. And for us who moved from some distant place to come to Dallas, Texas, that was definitely a sacrifice. To sell one's house, to pack up one's belongings, to move here. And at the time that we moved here, 79, 80, this community was one of the most wretched places in the entire city of Dallas. And so the houses were just horrid. It was very difficult to do that. So for the men of the household, it was a bit of a sacrifice, but for the women and children of the households, it was a great sacrifice. And so we can't help but laud our wives and the wives of other people who have come to this community and stayed throughout the years while things have gradually been increasing in decency, not just luxury, but in decency. It was a pretty indecent place to move in back in 78, 79, time when some of us came here. So all of these, we're talking about yajnas that we have to perform. They're different kinds than the people of previous ages who would, had to be a kingly person to perform a yajna, had to have lots and lots of gold to make utensils out of, had to invite persons from all over the planet, and their retinue, and provide housing for them. We can imagine in terms of today's wealth, trillions of dollars to have even one of these yajnas like that. But we have our own yajnas to deal with, even though we're not of that noble caste. And we don't have perhaps the funds available for making possible all of the elements of the yajna. I understand even in some countries today, India in particular that I know of, even putting on a wedding ceremony is quite an expensive proposition, and it takes a lot of money, and you have to invite a lot of family members, and it goes on for more than one day. And so this is something people here in the West are not so much accustomed to, unless you're really, really one of the billionaires of our country. And we have a few of those now. We're working on getting our first trillionaire. I don't know whether that's occurred or not. All right, so final yajna for us then, we can say, is getting old. And this is one that we didn't ask for, the one that we don't go looking for, but one that comes to us of its own accord. What is that Krishna says? That we should be satisfied with gain which comes of its own accord. He also, implies that we have to sacrifice, do the sacrifice of getting old. And a lot of times that means watching our kids go away. because in today's society, you know, many parents save a lot of money for their kids to go to college, and they go to some very, very expensive colleges, which are at some distance from one's home, perhaps. We have a few good colleges around here, but I don't know whether we call them Ivy League or not. And still, some people perform that sacrifice of taking a lot of their income, their wealth, and putting it toward their children's education so that they can become successful in this society. And so what happens as a result of that? Well, my wife and I moved, this was back in 1968 when I took my first degree. We moved from our home to a place that was a good, 3 or 4 hour drive away. And eventually we wound up coming to Dallas, which is a 10-hour drive away, 8 to 10-hour drive away. And so that left the old folks at home. If we had relatives that could take care of them, then that's what happened with them. Otherwise, you know, the parents had to go into some kind of a nursing facility, sometimes a facility that was not paid for by the kids, but provided by the state or the federal government. And so this is like our final yajna that we have to perform. And if we have not prepared ourselves during our entire lives, as some people prepare for sending their kids to college and getting them degreed and getting them into good jobs, if we have not prepared ourselves philosophically, then we're facing quite a bit of difficulty to meet this old age thing head on, because we already know that we have some members of our community here who are now getting into their late 60s, early 70s, and maybe a little older even, who are having to go and get special kinds of medical help with it, because the diseases are very common, and sometimes even for devotees, even devotees get these diseases because we got to leave this planet somehow. We're not guaranteed a permanent place. And so the yajna that we performed over the last 40, 50 years, Mother Kunti, is just to get us ready for this time in our lives when we have to fly our own plane, as Prabhupada puts it. And so if we have children who are very nice and still care about us, you know, sometimes they will be there to help us make this transition. And if we're not, if we're like a lot of people are in our Western society, the kids are grown and gone, and they no longer have that much interest in the old folks at home. And so here we are, folks. We're at the end. Some of us are approaching the end of our lives, and we're having to still perform yajnas. But fortunately for us, because of our association with Srila Prabhupada's movement and his disciples and his grand-disciples and his great-grand-disciples, we have a community of people here that make the yajnas, if not bearable, at least maybe even more than bearable. They actually are pleasant. It's a pleasant thing to live in such a community as we have here. So we thank God for Prabhupada. He's the one that has delivered us and put us on this path out of this material world back to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, from which we have come. And so we are so thankful to Srila Prabhupada, our Param Guru, to our own spiritual master, and we're thankful for all the young people that are taking up this banner of Krishna consciousness and spreading it all across the world. Hare Krishna. We are now out of time. Does anybody have a question or comment they want to address to Nanda Braj Prabhu so he can relate it to me? Can be a comment, can be a question. Mr. Bhagavan.
You're reading that I was listening to it on the way here, so I'm not sure exactly if I heard it right, but it sounded like somebody captured somebody else's property and then got all their wives, and it sounded like the wives were sort of like a commodity, like well, you lose the war, then you lose your wives. So what kind of culture is that? What was going on with that?
All right, let me get another version.
So he mentioned that we were reading Srimad Bhagavatam, and there was a part where a person lost the war, and somebody just took their wives as their property. So he was wondering, the question is, what kind of culture was it where a woman took as property?
What kind of culture is it? Is it looked at that would allow one's wife to become property, or any young woman to become property? What kind of culture is that? I would say our culture means no culture. Just like someone said to, I understand someone said to the Mohandas Gandhi, Mahatma, says, what do you think about Western culture? You know what his answer to that was? I think it would be a good idea. Western culture. In other words, he recognized that there's no culture. And so where there's no culture, Mr. Bhagavan, Prabhu, there's not going to be the following of rules and standards which are typically followed by human society. So that gives us an idea then of how society has become degraded. Now, we don't pass judgment too much on higher beings in our universe, the demigods, because their standards are different from ours. Even Srila Prabhupada has said that we should have no more than one wife. Even though kings in the past have had hundreds and thousands of wives, because they could afford them, they could care for them, they could give them children. They had lifespans that were much greater than our lives now. So it was a different time, and we're talking about yajnas. Can you imagine what kind of yajna it would be to have, say, 10 wives? How would a person possibly afford to take care of 10 wives? Mother Kunti? Get the microphone. Get it. There you go. Get it up close to your mouth also, please, so the people at home can hear.
The only mention of 100 wives was from Yuvanashva, who was, this is the lineage coming from Maharaj Ambarish.
Please keep the microphone up close to your mouth if you can.
I'm trying to find yeah, it's mentioned. Yuvanashva married 100 wives, but he had no sons, and therefore he entered the forest. In the forest, the sages performed a sacrifice known as Indra Yajna on his behalf. But that's when, once he drank the water that was intended for his wives to have children, and he drank it, and he gave birth. So I'm not sure what Mishra Bhagavan heard. I didn't hear.
Wait a minute. Hold on. You need to speak to her.
There was definitely something about it, because I remember reading the purport by Srila Prabhupada, and he was answering Mishra Bhagavan's question. I'm having difficulty finding it at the moment, but it was definitely in there. It's and Srila Prabhupada talks specifically about this idea of a wife being property.
Anyhow, in our society,
I'll look for it and I'll post it on the Srimad Bhagavatam. Oh, right here. It's right here. Number 2. Would you like me to read the purport? Verse number 2. Would you like me to read?
Of our reading today,
Yes.
read part of the purport. Don't read it all unless it's
In the Vedic
connected.
age, a man was sometimes called upon to beget sons in the womb of a lesser man's wife for the sake of better progeny. In such an instance, the woman is compared to an agricultural field. A person possessing an agricultural field may employ another person to produce food grains from it, but because the grains are produced from the land, they are considered the property of the owner of the land. Similarly, a woman has sometimes allowed to be impregnated by someone other than her husband, but the sons born of her would have become her husband's sons. Such sons are called Kshatrigatya. Because Rahitara had no sons, he took advantage of this method. So he's talking about comparing it to like,
Okay, so again, this is from some time in the past, and even a king such as Pandu, who was emperor of the entire world, he was cursed so that he could not produce a child in either of his 2 wives. And yet he asked Kunti, who had a mantra that had been given to her by a sage previously, whom she had taken care of in their home, asked her to call on the demigods to produce a child. But this is a very rare thing, and it does not necessarily lead to a happy life. Look at the difficulties that Kunti and her 5 sons, 3 sons plus 2, had to endure, the difficulties they had to endure, so and especially I think there was the other injunction that one should not, a man should not bear a child from his brother's wife. He should not have sexual relations with his brother's wife. So those are the general rules, and I think we have plenty of different kinds of opportunities. It would be rare to have a situation such as that in present day. Hold on. All right. Yes, please.
Oh, I was thinking, in this modern day, we really have a trouble with being property. We don't even take care of property properly. The thing, though, in a Vedic culture is everyone is a property of someone. I'm the property of my spiritual master. I'm a property of my father. I'm a property of my mother. And so I'm a property also. But we don't understand how to take care of each other nicely. And so therefore, when we hear that we're property from somebody, we get shooken up, right? Because so much trauma from not being taken care of properly. So that was my thought of when I heard this situation of property is that we're really meant to be all a property of someone. And one other thing is I wanted to mention that Gopala Bhatta Goswami has given us the Sat Kriya Saradipika, which is the performance of rituals in our Vedic culture for the age of Kali. And so as our society has grown more and we have Brahmins that and people who want these different ceremonies, when we do these ceremonies, we're doing it under the protection of Srilaji or Gopal Bhatta Goswami. So, for instance, I do fire yagyas, I do ceremonies, I do samskaras and stuff, and so even though it's very clear that we're not qualified, but we take shelter of Gopal Bhatta Goswami and make the sacrifice of us doing the sacrifice, knowing that we're not qualified. If that makes sense.
Okay.
Yeah,
Prabhu, you have a comment? Hold on just a moment. Let's get a microphone to you. I'll ask you to make it a little bit brief because we're almost out of...
Oh, yeah, it is brief. Yes, sir. I just want to say we're nobody's property but Krishna's. So
That's a pretty brief
just it.
statement. Yeah, that's true.
Or God, whatever your name for God is.
That's a very good point. A very good point. The eternal Father, Lord Sri Krishna. Anything else any other comments, brief comments that someone would like to make, or a question you'd like to ask before we go? All right. Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Shri Shivara Kalachandjidam ki jai. And we offer our obeisances to all Vaishnava devotees of the Lord who are just like desire trees, who fulfill the desires of everyone and who are full of compassion for the fallen conditioned souls. Vanchakalpatarubhyascha kripasinubhya eva cha patitanam bhavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namah. Anantakoti Vaishnavrinda ki jai. Hare Krishna, everyone. Thank you for being with us today, all of you, including you who are online. If you have time today, please chant the holy names of the Lord. Hare Krishna.